Well, it's a real pleasure to be back here today. I always feel that Frog completely hit the nail on the head with the topics they choose and the time. So no, it's a really critical conversation about assessment, but also well-being today. I think we've got about 25 minutes, so we'll try and stick to time. And just to kind of tee up the panel discussion, because I know we've heard from Joe and Andrew, two fantastic presentations today. I guess the sort of situation that we're in is trying to balance the needs of where learners are at whilst managing an extremely fragile school community. So I'm sure you've all experienced this. So whether that's tired teachers or parents, heightened government expectations at the moment, and perhaps some slightly frazzled learners. And then on top of that, in some of the contexts, I know, Andrea, you're in Madrid, but in some countries from people who are attending today, the actual assessment landscape itself is changing. So, in the UK, exams now being assessed by teachers as well. So there's this whole volatile situation. So I guess my first question, we'll jump straight into it just for the sakes of time, is, in this situation, how are you attempting to balance the need to assess children, fill the attainment gaps, whilst also being realistic about what we have all gone through and learners' well-being as well? And partly some of this has been gone over already, but I know some people will have joined sort of halfway through the event. So I don't know who'd love to sort of jump in and at that top level talk about how you're balancing, on the one hand, assessment, but also the need to support learners and teachers' well-being as well. Elizabeth, perhaps I'll throw it to you because we haven't heard from you yet.
Brilliant. Just from a teacher point of view, actually, I think for me, I've got now a decision to make in terms of, well, what do I do with those students when they come back in, those year 11s who are coming back to school? They obviously want to know their grade. What do we think that the teacher's going to predict them? But at the same time, we haven't finished the course yet. So it's that very much balancing act between those children will want to go on, some of them, to do business studies or ICT in the future. And actually, I've got to get them ready for them being able to study that at level 3 when they move on from our school. But equally then balancing that to, what grade do I give them? Do I have the evidence for that grade? Can I actually justify that grade that I want to give? And it's very much at the minute the decision between what's right for that child in terms of getting them ready for their next steps, but equally being comfortable and confident with the grade we're going to provide for those students. So big decisions really at the minute as to what we do. Certainly it's year 11 parents evening this evening, and I know there'll be the question on everybody's mind is, what grade are you going to give me, miss? What am I going to leave with? And it's a bit scary really at the minute as to what we do that's right for them, so that they're not disadvantaged in their futures and that they are able to succeed.
Mm-hmm.
But, it's a tricky situation for us at the minute, but that's just from a teacher point of view.
No, I mean that's really interesting, and I loved Andrew's comments earlier about this idea that we do need to prioritise the curriculum, that we can't, it's not a case of just squeezing everything back into the time remaining, but then also you are sort of balancing the need to progress to that next step. So anyone have any further comments on how you're actually going about balancing those two things?
I think that a lot of it also comes down to trusting your teachers and reassuring them that it's okay. In terms of what we're doing with saying we're going to prioritise this element of the curriculum and we're going to ditch this, that's quite new for teachers who worry that they're continually behind and then they're not meeting expectations. And it's teachers globally do a fantastic job, but they do worry and they're anxious. And I think a lot of our roles as a leadership team is to say it is okay. We are a huge campus and we've implemented one-way systems, so there is considerable time walking around the building, and it's lost time, but it's not because it's okay. And that feeling of it is okay, we're going to do what we can do, we'll do what we do well, we're going to help support you, is absolutely fundamental. And then one of the things we've brought in last year across the school was the growth mindset ethos, but using that with our teachers as well. it's okay, and that is slowly, it doesn't stop them worrying, but it reassures them to hear it.
I think that's so important to remember that these are, it's a cliche now, but they are unprecedented times, and not to just feel like we have to keep doing the same thing just because that's what's gone before. But and my sort of following question, then we'll get into the detail of how you've actually sort of gone about things as well. But everything has changed. I put here, this is a chance to question how we go about assessment and what assessment looks like. And I know, we've already seen some examples of, continuous assessment, so using games and so on. I just wondered if you had any ideas on, how you'd like to see assessment evolve out of this situation, things that you'd like to see continue should we get back to some sense of normality as well.
Yeah, I guess for me, I think, as I sort of mentioned in the presentation, a big part of that is kind of keeping it quite low stakes. And I think, what you were saying about how do we balance as we come back to school, part of that is just, let's teach children things that are enjoyable and interesting, and keep the testing kind of low stakes. I know that's hard for our GCSE students, where we're desperately trying to have evidence of what they're doing, but
yeah,
let's do things that are exciting and enjoyable, and focus on what we are learning right now, and give ourselves space and time to think and reflect on how we're going to maybe shift what we do, or maybe embed skills a little bit differently as we move forward.
And I'm certainly aware as well of the digital world that we're in currently. So, my 7-year-old as a mum can now type. Doesn't like to write anymore, but certainly can type very well. And there's that concern, isn't there, between actually, as you've just said, doing things that children enjoy because they're in school and they want to actually take part in things that are fun and that they're going to get great learning from, but equally balancing that between what you've got to achieve and what you've got to do. So I liked what Andrea, what you said earlier, actually. I'm not going to do this part of time because they don't need to know that at the minute. So why do we do that? Let's do the things that they need to do, like the numbers, because that's crucial for them forever. So I think it's a balancing act then between actually making it fun and doing the stuff they've got to do. So I think that was both of what you said actually rang true as a mum as well as a teacher at the same time, thinking that is crucial.
Absolutely. Welcome, Vicky. And in fact, it made me think, I was reading something recently about apprentices and endpoint assessment, and actually, that delaying their, sort of finalising their apprenticeships as well, or sort of proving that because of, the need to show in-person skills. And whereas we have VR, we have simulation, if we could do a better job of getting some of the assessment in some of those platforms, it's not exactly the same, but I think there's the need to sort of adapt, as some of you have proved as well through what you're doing. But we'll move on to some of the details, so for people that are listening in, they can kind of benefit from all the things that you've been up to. So my next question was, what strategies and tools are you using for assessment and attainment in your current situation? So, I love the example of the coaching and the games, but are there any other sort of details for people who've joined that you'd like to share?
I think one of the things that we found very important is that ongoing continuous assessment. But whatever you're doing, whether it's, like the spooky game or Times Table Rockstars, it doesn't really, the app that you're using or the platform that you're using has got to be linked to purposeful assessment back in the real world. So making sure that if they're playing a spooky game, they're looking at the bridging between problem solving, that you're then using their coming back, their children are accounting for their progress, and then the teachers then updating their own assessment records. Otherwise, what you end up with is a lot of plates spinning and no real world connection between them. And if you're going to go down a road of trying to, implement support systems, using your support staff, getting parents involved, getting the children involved, everything has got to be linked up. Otherwise, it becomes a paperwork exercise. And you've got the more joined up you can make the activities or the learning that the children are involved in with your assessment, and then linking that to progress and next steps. that's the fundamentals, you know, of making sure that everything you're doing is meaningful, relevant, and appropriate.
I think what we found with using the mark book in Frog, which a lot of us have been doing, but an awful lot of us haven't as well. And we're nowhere using it as sophisticated as Angie was doing there, which was very impressive. And I'm going to be passing that on to our Key Stage 2 manager. You know, having said that, more of us have been using it because, you know, as Joe was saying, we're all doing the online marking now. And that has been a revelation in getting staff to suddenly realise marking actually doesn't have to be that tone of stuff that sits on your desk and makes you feel depressed and reaching for the GNC and writing out. It doesn't have to be that. And that's been liberating for people. You know, we've been able to mark as it's coming in, but it links to that point about you're then getting that progression. And therefore you are having continuous assessment, although we do half-termly assessment points. Now, that's just like summing up, giving them, okay, you know, maybe you missed a few pieces of work, so this is your chance, you know, the kind of thing. But it's not just a complete standalone as it was. It's now we're looking at everything across the market and all the stuff we've been using. And what I've also noticed is the feedback quality is much better now because, again, we can mark as it comes in, so it's not such a, you know, and I certainly saw that with Joe. I recognised what you showed on the screen there, you know, with the annotations that we're doing. It took us a little, we weren't using that before. And we needed to have Graham help us quite a bit to kind of get up to speed. And then I kind of taught myself with Graham, and then I kind of showed everybody else. And once everyone started using it, everyone really thought it was a really good tool because we were giving feedback almost within a day or two, quite instantly almost, to the students. And it was better quality feedback because the marking wasn't so onerous. I mean, you can actually record your feedback. I mean, I nearly fell off the chair. I could speak. Well, I was saying, well, you know, you haven't explained that very well. And it was nanoseconds. And you can actually record it. And the children can hear it. And they open up the file and they get the feedback. And they hear me witching on at them. So it's just like, wow. But that made workload much easier. But it made quality much better, ironically. So, yeah, interesting times.
I thought that was really interesting, Vicky, because Joe, I know that you said earlier that, you know, you've moved from marking on paper to, you know, having everything within the platform. So, you know, do you think that you'll continue to do that, or will you go back to using paper?
Yeah, it's funny because we really didn't want to do it at the beginning of the year. We were like, this is annoying, but I suppose we have to. Yeah. But we found, just like Vicky said, we found it really, really helpful. Not just from the teacher point of view, but also from the student point of view, in that their feedback is all in one recorded place that they can get to again and again. So they aren't like, I don't know where that question is missed, I've lost the paper. It's all there in one place. And we can draw on it in lots of different ways. So for us, that's definitely something that is here to stay, even when we're back to normal.
That's fantastic.
Can I just build on everything that is saying? One of the things we want to start moving towards more, and we're really dabbling and playing around, and you know, it's embedded in different ways across the school, is getting children to self-assess their work, so that children are assessing the success criteria from the lesson, which enables the teacher to identify exactly the different levels within the class. Where the children are in their learning, enabling children to identify those success criteria at the start of a lesson, or before, you know, a big piece of writing, or enables then children to self-assess their own work and set their next steps. So as a utopian model, if you're then having teachers check that or assess that children are self-assessing accurately, you then have a far more robust platform to enable children to make further and more rapid progress on their own terms, because the children are identifying their level. They know where they are, they know where they've got to get to, and they know what success looks like. And having that cyclical motion of children identifying the success criteria, self-assessing, setting their next step, supported by the teacher, then flips the role of teacher from teaching to facilitating. And the children and the teacher having far more control over where the children are and the rate of their progression in their own learning.
Absolutely, and I love that example from Joe about the sort of peer-to-peer learning and using the examples. So that's fantastic. And Elizabeth, because we haven't heard much from you yet, but I know that your role is also sort of helping teachers to get familiar with digital tools. And I wondered what sort of time-saving tools or life hacks, for want of a better phrase, you've helped your teachers sort of embrace to get through this difficult time as well.
Yeah, I'll talk about it a bit more later, but essentially I normally run CPD on a Tuesday, and we were looking at Rose and Shine, and suddenly when we were all at home, Rose and Shine became less important, and suddenly online teaching became the predominant session, shall we say. So Moat, which I know you just mentioned in terms of verbally recording your feedback to students, that's been invaluable. And staff just say the quality of the feedback they can provide, because you're not having to write it, is so much better than if you were writing it, because you can just get so much more information very quickly. So that's been one. Another one is auto magical forms, and they are magic. So essentially they take a PDF and change it into a Google form. Students can then answer the form and it marks it for you. Honestly, it's a revelation. So we've used that an awful lot as well. Even just things like the whiteboard system. So students were able then, who don't have potentially paper at home, but they could use their whiteboard system on a device that we provided for them and engage with the lessons that they could then show their answers to the teachers. That's been really useful as well. But it wasn't just things that I found. I can stalk Twitter all day long to find things that other people are suggesting. But then our teachers found things and they'd record themselves using them. And then on a Tuesday evening, they'd show it to the staff. And that's been fantastic, because it's then not much just me preaching about things I've found. It's what they've used that saved them when they've got 5 hours a day on a screen, what they can then use to make their 5 hours just easier and a little bit, less stressful, because it's a very different way of teaching. So we've asked them what's working for them, and then we've shared it on a Tuesday evening so that other people can go, I'm going to steal that because that's going to save me a bit of time. And I can then go outside and get some fresh air at the same time. So it's been really that whenever people have found something, we've just shared it, because it's been a case of, if this is going to save us all a little bit of time, let's do that.
No, exactly. We found that collaborative air of getting people, rather than being top down, just like this. I mean, this has been a magical tool as well, in that, we just get people together, we've had cluster groups, and then we moved them around and just sort of said, look, just, and you've got your go-to people. Oh, go to so-and-so for that one, and go to so-and-so for that one. And we had one of our young teachers, he's only in his second year of teaching as an NQT, and he got quite busy on a number of things, and he was bowled up, and I said to him, right, run a session. He was like, but he did a fantastic job, and it was just nice for the staff, because even if they were a bit daunted by doing it, they knew they could speak to him separately afterwards to have a chat. So it's having our own mentors within ourselves, and to be able to go to, because you're too busy to do it as soon as you've come back from an inset thing. But if you've got your own staff here to talk to, it just makes so much sense. And we really found that collaborative air is, again, something that's been a real benefit of what's gone on.
And I think that as well. So when an evening comes and then the member of staff isn't so sure because they're not so comfortable with the computer, being able then to speak to somebody on a one-to-one to go, I have no idea what you just said in that lesson. It made no sense in that CPD session. So being able then to meet with them in the next day or whenever suits. Because I know certainly our staff have gone, I'm sorry, but it's too fast for me on a Tuesday. I don't keep up, which is absolutely fine. So it's got to be right for those members of staff who aren't comfortable on the computers compared to ours who've gone, I'm absolutely fine with this. I found this, and this. So that, as you said, having that one person you go and chat to when you want to go, I now want to know a bit more, I think has helped ease some people's stresses as well.
And we'll certainly carry that on, because that's so much a valuable way of on-the-job training.
Yeah.
I mean, it's brilliant.
It's the same.
So I was loving hearing you all talking about verbal feedback, because I know that certainly on the EdTech podcast that's come up a number of times, but there's been a lot of kind of misconceptions around it or hesitations, and it's really great to hear how useful it's been, but also how people are using it now. And then I've got a question here. So Sue posted at 10:43 a.m. I'd be interested to know what you would keep digitally now and what is best suited to face-to-face. I think that's kind of where you were starting to talk about, but also I guess lays back slightly to also the coaching side of things. But yeah, I'd love to hear, so what you'd keep digitally and what's best suited face-to-face.
I think I would just say that we view the digital space as a tool for what we're doing in lessons. So it's not so much a separation of like that's digital, that's face-to-face. I think for me, everything that we're doing digitally helps us with what we're doing in the classroom. So I know we've talked loads about feedback, but that's a good example where, of course, we're going to be telling them feedback in the room with us. Of course, it's going to be delivered face to face. But the tool of them having access to it, us being able to, record, all of those things are still going to be used going forward, I think. So for me, there's not like a real separation of different things that we're going to leave behind. I think it's a tool that we can use at home and here, and particularly as we enter this phase where, let's face it, a lot of students are still going to be dipping in and out of school as they're isolating, etc. Not to kind of forget about those digital things, I think.
I very much hope the days of screeds of marking are completely over. Teachers kind of walking out of school with 26 books they've got to mark. I'm kind of hoping those days are completely finished, and just the importance of that feedback and that feed forward, the dialogue between teacher and the children, between the students, and that self-assessment and reflection. So I think hopefully the education system will have taken a great leap forward, and we won't revert back to screeds of marking, because it certainly doesn't benefit the teacher or the student, or to help progress learning. So very much about self-assessment, self-reflection, next steps, target setting, ditching 2 stars and a wish or something like that.
Fantastic. I think we are coming up to time. I'll wait for Lucy to jump on the screen to give me a sort of virtual poke in the arm. But Lucy, I just wondered if we had time for 30-second key sort of takeaways for everyone listening in.
Absolutely.
Okay, so any final thoughts on balancing assessment, plugging those attainment gaps, and ensuring the well-being of this kind of school community? Very hard to sum up in 30 seconds, but if you were to say one thing, what would that be to kind of leave us with? Who'd like to go first?
I think I would say use what you've got available and what you've learned and improved on. So I think sometimes it feels like we're faced with this big change of the students coming back, but instead it's a consistency. It's bringing what they've done at home into a classroom. So use what you've got available. For me, that was using exemplar work has been really helpful, but it might be other things for you. Kind of don't abandon those. Use them going forward. That would be my
very good advice.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've hit the nail on the head in terms of don't abandon things. And I think that's my biggest sort of concern now as we move forward into this new norm, whatever that may be in the future, is that we've learned so much and we've changed so much in what we do. We've got to work on maintaining all the good things and not falling back. I do think we're assessing more effectively. I do think we're working with the pupils more collaboratively. I think they're enjoying it more, by and large. You've always got the odd exception, but I think by and large they are. And we need to hang on to that. So as we transfer back into the classroom, you're right, we need to keep on, the digital learning, the digital planner, the fact that they've got your recordings kept. We can carry on with all of that. And I need to be careful we don't, have some staff, going back to the comfort zone. It's like sort of, starting a healthy eating plan, isn't it? You really find the benefit of it. And then it's very tempting to just, pig out on a bad day. So it's kind of, okay, let's sort of keep everybody on track. And that's the challenge ahead now. But I think it's a positive challenge. I think people are on board.
I think trust your teachers, take control of the curriculum, focus on what's important, make sure you're embedding from your early years and making sure those core skills are there, and making sure they've got appropriate and relevant skills and knowledge when they transition up to secondary, and focus on that feedback and that feedback and feed forward. And it's a journey together. Don't be afraid to make mistakes, and learn from each other, collaborate, communicate with a high level of accountability on all sides, including the teachers and parents at home, and it will all come together. And celebrate your successes, something we're not always very good at as educators, but really look back and think, good grief, we did really well, and be proud to celebrate your successes.
And I think that's it for us. We want to have time to reflect what's gone well, what we're going to keep, what will we not go back to a non-digital world on, the things that are now become non-negotiables, where actually it saved us time, it's worked for those students, I think they've made progress because of what we've put into place. Let's look at what they are when we've got some time to reflect, and then keep them going and keep them working as they are doing so well currently.
Well, thank you all so much. I have to say, as someone who's got a child in school, it's really heartening to hear, who's looking after his interests as well, and all the amazing things that are being done around the country and internationally. So thank you all for sharing, and thank you, Lucy, and best of luck with the rest of the event. Thank
you, Sophie, so much for hosting, and be good to share some more of the stories on your channels too. And thank you to our audience for joining the panel discussion again.